Most people believe dementia is genetic. You either have the gene or you don't. I believed that too for the first decade of my career. Then I started seeing something that didn't fit the story we'd been told. A 68-year-old retired high school principal, active, crossword puzzles every morning, book club twice a month. Her sister, same genes, 2 years older, was sharp as ever. But this woman, she started forgetting names at family dinners, then addresses of places she'd driven to for 40 years. Within 18 months, she needed help managing her medications. Here's what nobody told her, what her well-meaning family doctor never had the time to explain. What I'm going to tell you today. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Hartman. I'm a neurologist with 28 years treating cognitive decline, memory disorders, and dementia in adults over 60. I've evaluated over 3,200 patients in my career. I've held brain scans in my hands showing damage that was entirely preventable. And I've spent nearly 3 decades watching the same patterns repeat. People who did everything their doctors told them to do, who followed the standard advice, and still ended up losing pieces of themselves year by year. The difference between the patients who kept their sharpness and the ones who didn't. It wasn't genetics. It was 4 specific habits that accelerate brain aging after 65. Habits most seniors don't even recognize as dangerous. Today, I'm going to tell you what nobody took the time to explain to them. Before I give you the 4 habits, you need to understand why your brain after 65 is fundamentally different from your brain at 45. Think of your brain like an old house with original wiring. For decades, everything worked fine. The lights came on. The outlets delivered power. The system handled the load. But after 65, the electrical system doesn't have the same reserves it used to. A power surge that would have been absorbed at 45 now trips the breaker. And if you keep tripping that breaker night after night, year after year, the damage becomes permanent. Your brain's backup systems, the ones that cleared out damaged proteins while you slept, the ones that kept inflammation in check, the ones that rerouted blood flow when one pathway got sluggish. Those systems lose capacity after 65. Not dramatically, not all at once, gradually, silently. Studies show that after 65, the brain's ability to clear beta-amyloid protein, that's the toxic protein that builds up in Alzheimer's disease, drops by nearly 30% compared to middle age. Your cleanup crew is still working. They're just smaller and slower. That margin, the difference between clearing the buildup every night and letting it accumulate millimeter by millimeter, is where dementia takes root. The habits I'm about to show you, they steal that margin even faster. They turn a gradual decline into an accelerated one. And most people have no idea they're doing it. Now the first habit, and this one surprises people every single time because it sounds healthy. Skipping breakfast after 65. Stay with me. Your brain runs on glucose, not occasionally, constantly. Every thought you have, every memory you form, every decision you make requires glucose. Unlike your muscles, which can store energy as glycogen and tap into it when needed, your brain has almost no storage capacity. It depends on a steady supply from your bloodstream, minute by minute, hour by hour. When you wake up after an 8 to 10 hour overnight fast, your brain's glucose reserves are already at their lowest point of the day. Your liver has been working all night to keep your blood sugar stable while you slept. By morning, those reserves are nearly depleted. If you skip breakfast, especially if you're taking blood pressure medication or a diuretic, and more than 60% of adults over 65 are on at least one of those, your brain is running on fumes by 10 or 11 in the morning. Here's the mechanism most people miss. When blood sugar drops too low, your body doesn't just sit there and accept it. It releases stress hormones, primarily cortisol, to pull glucose from your muscle and liver stores. That's a survival mechanism. It works beautifully at 35. At 68, that cortisol response is exaggerated. You release more cortisol for the same blood sugar drop than you did 20 years ago. Higher cortisol means higher inflammation throughout your body, and especially in your brain. Higher inflammation means more damage to the hippocampus, the seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain responsible for forming new memories and transferring them into long-term storage. A patient I'll call Margaret came to me at 71, sharp woman, retired accountant, detail-oriented, managed her own finances, her grandchildren's college fund, everything. She'd been doing intermittent fasting because a podcast told her it was anti-aging. She was skipping breakfast entirely, drinking black coffee until noon, eating her first meal at 12:30 or 1 p.m. She felt fine. No dizziness. No hunger pangs. She thought she was doing something good for her body. 6 months later, her husband noticed she was repeating herself. She'd ask him the same question 3 times in an afternoon. She'd tell him the same story about her sister twice in one evening. When I tested her, her fasting blood sugar was fine, normal range. But when we checked her cortisol at 11 a.m., 2 hours before her first meal, it was through the roof, nearly double what it should have been. Write that down. After 65, your brain cannot afford to run on empty in the morning. It doesn't have the metabolic flexibility it used to have. The fix here costs nothing. Eat something within 90 minutes of waking up. Not a full breakfast if you're not hungry. Not a 3-course meal. A handful of nuts. A piece of fruit with a tablespoon of almond butter or peanut butter. A hard-boiled egg. A small bowl of Greek yogurt. Anything that delivers 15 to 20 grams of protein or healthy fat to stabilize your blood sugar and prevent that cortisol spike. That's all. Starting tomorrow morning, not next week, tomorrow. The second habit is one I see in at least half of my patients over 70, and it's the one that makes me the angriest because it's so easily preventable, and yet almost nobody is tracking it. Taking multiple medications without a single annual review of nutrient depletion. Let me be specific. If you're on a proton pump inhibitor, that's omeprazole, esomeprazole, lansoprazole, any of the drugs that end in azole for heartburn or acid reflux, you are actively blocking the absorption of vitamin B12 in your stomach. Every single day you take that pill, you're making it harder for your body to absorb B12 from food. If you're on metformin for blood sugar control, same thing. B12 absorption drops by up to 30%. If you're on a diuretic like furosemide or hydrochlorothiazide for blood pressure or fluid retention, you're losing magnesium and potassium in your urine every time you go to the bathroom. If you're on a statin for cholesterol, atorvastatin, simvastatin, rosuvastatin, you're depleting CoQ10, a compound your heart and brain cells need to produce energy. Here's what nobody tells you. B12 deficiency looks exactly like early dementia. Exactly. Memory problems, confusion, difficulty concentrating, trouble finding words, slower processing speed, mood changes, depression. Every single symptom overlaps. I've had patients referred to me for dementia evaluation, families convinced their loved one has Alzheimer's, who didn't have dementia at all. They had a B12 level of 180 or 200 when it should have been over 400, ideally over 500. One simple series of B12 injections, sometimes just switching to a sublingual methylcobalamin supplement, and 3 months later, they were back to themselves. Sharp, clear, engaged. But if you don't know to check, if your doctor is managing your prescriptions in those rushed 15-minute appointments, and nobody ever sits down to map out what those drugs are stealing from your system year after year, that deficiency quietly damages your nerves. And once peripheral nerve damage crosses a certain threshold, it's permanent. A 74-year-old man I treated, I'll call him Robert, was on 5 medications when he came to see me. A proton pump inhibitor for reflux, a statin for cholesterol, a diuretic for mild ankle swelling, metformin for borderline diabetes, and a beta blocker for blood pressure control. 5 drugs. Not one doctor, in 8 years of prescribing those medications, had ever told him that 4 out of those 5 drugs were depleting 4 critical nutrients his brain and nervous system needed to function properly. When we finally tested him, and I had to specifically request these tests because they're not part of standard panels, his B12 was borderline at 2 on 20. His magnesium was low. His CoQ10 was undetectable, completely absent. He'd been describing brain fog to his primary care doctor for 2 years. Difficulty focusing, forgetting why he walked into a room, losing his train of thought mid-sentence. Everyone told him it was normal aging, just part of getting older. It wasn't aging. It was pharmacology. It was preventable, fixable nutrient depletion caused by well-intentioned medications that nobody had thought to balance with supplementation. Here's the question to ask your doctor, and I want you to write this down, word for word. Can you review my complete medication list and tell me which nutrients these drugs deplete and what I should be supplementing to prevent deficiency? If they don't know off the top of their head, ask them to look it up. Ask them to refer you to a clinical pharmacist who specializes in this. Many hospitals have them. Do not assume it's being tracked in your chart. Do not assume someone is monitoring this behind the scenes. In most cases, it is not. You have to ask. 2 more habits after this one. And habit number 3, that's the one that even I had a significant blind spot about for the first 12 years of my career. Stay with me. The third habit is something millions of seniors do every single night without realizing the cumulative damage it causes to their brain's cleaning system. Watching television or using a tablet or smartphone in the 2 hours before bed. I can already hear the skepticism. And honestly, good. Healthy skepticism is what keeps us from falling for nonsense. So let me show you exactly why this works the way it does and why the research on this is so consistent. Your brain has a cleaning system. It's called the glymphatic system. Think of it like a nighttime janitorial crew that comes in after everyone goes home. It works like the brain's waste disposal. It clears out beta amyloid protein, tau protein, and metabolic debris that build up during the day while your neurons are firing. But here's the part most people don't know, the part that changes everything. The glymphatic system is 10 times more active during deep sleep than it is when you're awake. Not light sleep, not REM sleep, where you're dreaming. Deep slow-wave sleep. The dreamless restorative sleep, where your brain waves slow down to long, rolling delta waves. That is when the cleanup happens. During deep sleep, the space between your brain cells actually expands by up to 60%, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flood through and wash out the toxic buildup. Blue light from screens, televisions, tablets, phones, computer monitors, suppresses melatonin production in your brain. Melatonin is the hormone that signals your body it's time to wind down and prepare for sleep. When you suppress melatonin by staring at a bright screen, two things happen. First, it takes longer to fall asleep. You're lying there, mind racing, body not getting the signal that it's nighttime. Second, and more importantly, when you do finally fall asleep, you spend significantly less time in deep sleep. You cycle through light sleep and REM, but your brain never drops into those deep delta waves where the cleaning happens. Less deep sleep means less glymphatic clearing. Less clearing means more beta amyloid accumulation overnight. More accumulation, night after night, year after year, means higher dementia risk. This isn't theory. This isn't a hypothesis. A 2023 study published in JAMA Neurology tracked over 8,000 adults over 65 for 7 years. They monitored screen time before bed and cognitive function annually. Those who spent more than 2 hours on screens in the 2 hours before bed had a 27% higher rate of cognitive decline compared to those who stopped all screen time by 8 p.m. That's significant. That's not a small difference. Here's the age-specific risk amplification that makes this even more critical after 65. Your deep sleep naturally decreases as you age. At 40, you might spend 20% of your total sleep time in deep sleep. At 70, that drops to 10% or less. You're already getting less of it than you did at middle age. If you add blue light suppression on top of that natural age-related decline, you're cutting your brain's cleaning time in half. You're down to maybe 30 or 40 minutes of deep sleep per night. That's not enough time for your glymphatic system to clear a full day's worth of metabolic waste. A woman I treated, I'll call her Linda, 69 years old, former ICU nurse, incredibly sharp and detail-oriented her entire career, came to me worried about early Alzheimer's. Her mother had developed it at 74. Linda was terrified she was seeing the same early signs in herself, forgetting appointments, losing her keys 3 times in 1 week. Walking into the kitchen and forgetting why. I asked her about her evening routine, specifically what she did in the hour before bed. Every night, she watched YouTube videos or scrolled through news articles on her iPad in bed until she felt sleepy. Sometimes until 11 p.m., sometimes midnight. When we did a sleep study on her, she was getting less than 30 minutes of deep sleep per night. Her glymphatic system had almost no time to do its job. We made one change. No screens after 8 p.m. She could read a physical book. She could listen to music or a podcast with the screen off. She could sit and talk with her husband. But no blue light, no exceptions. 3 months later, we repeated the sleep study. Her deep sleep time had tripled. She was getting close to 90 minutes per night. 6 months later, when I saw her for follow-up, her memory complaints were completely gone. She was back to her baseline, sharp. No more lost keys, no more forgotten appointments. Let me ask you something. What time did you look at a screen last night? Do you bring your phone to bed with you? Do you check email or social media while lying down? Most people do. The fix here requires nothing except a new boundary and a little bit of discipline. After 8 p.m., no screens. Not your phone, not your tablet, not the television if you're sitting close to it. If you absolutely must watch something, sit at least 8 feet away from the TV and turn on every light in the room to dilute the blue wavelength impact on your melatonin. Give it 6 weeks. Track whether you're waking up feeling more rested, more clear-headed. That's your body telling you the glymphatic cleaning system is working again. The 4th habit is the one I see in nearly every patient I evaluate for memory problems, and it's the one that frustrates me the most because the medical system actively encourages it. Social isolation after retirement. Not complete isolation. Most of my patients still see family. But the loss of daily social interaction with colleagues, acquaintances, people who aren't family. Here's the mechanism. Your brain builds cognitive reserve through novelty and challenge. Every new conversation with someone you don't know well forces your brain to work. You have to remember their name, track the thread of what they're saying, respond appropriately, adjust your tone, read their facial expressions. That is a neurological workout. When you retire and your social circle shrinks to the same 5 people, your spouse, your 2 kids, your sister, your 1 close friend, your brain stops getting that workout. Familiarity is comfortable. But comfort is the opposite of cognitive challenge. Studies show that seniors with fewer than 3 social contacts per week outside their household have double the rate of cognitive decline compared to those with 7 or more contacts. After 65, loneliness is as damaging to your brain as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's not an exaggeration. That's the data. Here's what makes this worse. When you start noticing memory slips, the natural response is to withdraw. You don't want to seem confused in front of people. You don't want to forget someone's name and feel embarrassed. So you stop going to the book club. You skip the community center. You stay home. And that withdrawal accelerates the very thing you were afraid of. I want to tell you about a patient. I'll call him David, 73 years old, retired engineer, brilliant man. After he retired, he spent most of his time at home working on his model trains. He'd see his wife every day, his daughter once a week, his son maybe twice a month, nobody else. Within 2 years, his wife noticed he was having trouble following conversations at family dinners. He'd lose the thread. Forget what someone had just said. She brought him to me, convinced it was Alzheimer's. I ran the test. No Alzheimer's. No vascular dementia. What he had was disuse. His brain had stopped being challenged. We didn't prescribe medication. We prescribed social re-engagement. He joined a model train club that met twice a week. He started volunteering at the library one morning a week. He took a community college class on local history, not because he needed to learn it, but because he'd be in a room with strangers twice a week. 6 months later, his wife said he was back, sharp, engaged, participating fully in conversations again. It is never too late. Your brain can rebuild connections at 73, at 80, at 87, but it needs the raw material. And that raw material is other people. The fix. Make a list of 3 social activities you used to do or always wanted to try that involve being around people you don't already know. A class, a volunteer shift, a walking group, a hobby club. Pick one. Commit to going once a week for 8 weeks, not next month, this week. Your brain is depending on it. I want to be honest with you for a moment, not as a content creator, as a neurologist. I have sat across from patients at 2 in the afternoon in a clinical office holding a brain scan that showed atrophy I knew was preventable. I have spoken to spouses in waiting rooms who had no idea their husband or wife was slipping until it was undeniable. In case after case, the contributing factors were not mysterious. They were skipping breakfast. They were on 5 medications with 0 nutrient review. They were scrolling their phone in bed until midnight. They were spending weeks at a time speaking to no one outside their household. These are not exotic risk factors. They are the background noise of millions of ordinary retirements. And that background noise, accumulated morning after morning, night after night, year after year, quietly dismantles the brain's ability to protect itself. I want to tell you about a patient. I'll call her Patricia, 67 years old, retired speech therapist, loved gardening, had a sharp sense of humor. She came to me after her daughter noticed she started mixing up words, calling a fork a spoon, calling the garage the basement. Small things, but consistent. Patricia had been doing everything the standard advice told her to do. She walked every day. She did Sudoku. She took her medications. But nobody had ever told her that her omeprazole was blocking her B12. Nobody had told her that staying up watching Netflix until 11 p.m. was destroying her deep sleep. Nobody had told her that spending 6 days a week alone in her garden, as peaceful as it was, wasn't giving her brain the social stimulation it desperately needed. We made 3 changes. We switched her to an H2 blocker instead of the PPI and added a B12 supplement. We set an 8 p.m. screen cutoff, and we got her into a community gardening group that met twice a week. 8 months later, the word mix-up stopped. She was back to finishing crosswords without frustration. Her daughter said it was like having her mom back. The first thing Patricia said to me at that follow-up visit was this: why didn't anyone tell me these things 5 years ago? That question stays with me. It's a big part of why I make videos like this one. Let me give you the summary. 4 habits accelerating dementia after 65. Number 1, skipping breakfast and letting your blood sugar drop too low in the morning. Feed your brain within 90 minutes of waking. Number 2, taking multiple medications without ever reviewing nutrient depletion. Ask your doctor which vitamins and minerals your prescriptions are stealing. Number 3, screen time in the 2 hours before bed, disrupting your deep sleep and your brain's glymphatic cleaning system. No blue light after 8 p.m. Number 4, social isolation after retirement, shrinking your cognitive reserve. Commit to at least 1 weekly social activity with people outside your household. Which of these 4 habits do you recognize in yourself? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. There is someone in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, a friend, who needs exactly this information. Someone who's experiencing memory slips and being told it's just normal aging when it might not be. Send this video to them. That one share might be the most important thing you do today. Every week, I bring you honest, evidence-based information about protecting your brain and your independence. Information I wish every one of my patients had access to long before they walked into my office with concerns. If you want more of that, subscribe. One last thing, and this is important. Everything I've shared today is based on published research and my clinical experience as a neurologist. But your situation is unique. Your history is individual. Before changing anything, any medication, any supplement, any routine, please talk to your own physician first. That conversation is not a formality. It is the whole point. Better information, better conversations, better outcomes. That's the chain that matters. Your brain has been working for you every single minute of every single day for 65, 70, or 75 years without ever asking for anything in return. Give it this. Take care of your mind.